Good morning, welcome back. This is Daybreak and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. It's the World Environment Day and it's themed ecosystem restoration and how stakeholders are taking part in these efforts in the context of what's happening around the world at the moment and the questions around preservation, reservation, conservation and restoration, and also the concept of the climate change and the consequences it's having, the double extremes. When it rains, it floods, and then it washes farmlands away, the risk of hunger this poses on the country's food security system, and also the aspect of safety, and also drought on the other end when it doesn't rain, and that bearing with the bearing that has on the population in terms of pushing people on the brink of starvation, and the pictures that we have seen of the consequences the drought had on the countries that largely are within the confines of the arid and semi-arid lands. This morning in studio we'll be talking about that and put a spotlight on the same. This World Environment Day 2024 will be hosted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and revolving around land restoration and also stopping of desertification, the building of drought resilience across the world. With me in studio is an esteemed panel, and starting off with the only lady, and Evelyn Njuguna is the Marketing and Communication Executive, Irihab. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Good morning.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you.
Lovely.
For this lovely discussion. Also with us is Dr. William Ojuang. He is the World Wildlife Fund Fresh Waterland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. And also with us is James Odongo, the Chief Administrative Officer at the Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization, KEPRO. Good morning. Thank you for your time. And also with us in studio is Ernest Chicheti, the Corporate Affairs Manager at the Kenya Climate Innovation Center that handles a lot when it comes to issues of climate and environment. Good morning.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you.
Thank you.
Let's begin first with you, Evelyn. How significant is today in the calendar as the world marks this important day and the theme around ecosystem restoration? How significant, how key is this?
Today is quite significant because in the face of climate change that we are currently facing, we've seen intensive climate effects towards especially farmers. We can see extremes of climate, especially, for instance, the extremes drought, extremes floods, for instance, the past few months, what we are experiencing, that is as a result of climate change. Yes, so today is quite significant because it will help us not only sensitize to the public or also to farmers, but to also educate them on how they can be able to mitigate the intensive climate change. Yeah.
Dr. William, coming to you, the issue of water is very key. Drought basically means lack of water and the dried up panels. How important is this also in the context of where we are with regards to coming from that perspective and today's important theming around the ecosystem restoration? What then are we doing before we come to the nitty-gritty details in terms of our water uptake and the bearing this has in terms of its positivities on our environment, on our food systems and how we conduct our businesses?
Thank you, Ayub. Yes, as a conservation organization, this day is extremely important. Very, very important, not just in our calendar as a country, but at a global stage. Probably giving Kenyans a bit of history on this. This came as a result of the first ever conference on environment. It was held in Stockholm way back in 1972.
Okay.
And we held the first World Environment Day in 1973 in Switzerland. And this is the time people came together to look at environment-related issues. And we've held this day, commemorating this day, till today, the 5th of June. And really, really important that today the celebration is being led by UNEP, sitting here in Nairobi. And therefore, a good time to look at things that matter to us as a nation. And one key thing, therefore, is water. Water is everything. Water is food. Water is health. name it, will not be able to realize our development agenda if we don't really turn the beam of light on those human-related activities that have negative impact on water. So this is a very, very important discussion, a time to create awareness, a time to really think of what is it that we need to do as a country. When it comes to drought, as you have rightfully pointed out, we are disparate. And recently, we have witnessed, floods. So it's time really to call for that collective action on water. And this takes everybody's role when it comes to water resources management. It's cross-sectoral. Community need to take responsibility, those who are living within the catchment. Government agencies need to take responsibility. CSOs from Worldwide Fund for Nature, for instance, we need to take responsibility, working together in a coalition with our peer organizations. How about the academia? We need to understand better our resources. And one, strengthening catchment management, but two, ensuring that we also reduce pollution. Really, really important. So this is the discussion that we're going to have to ensure that Kenyans are not that water blind.
Okay, and before we go to pollution, because it's an important component of this discussion, the flip side of what we are talking about, you talked about the importance of water. And the rains that we had in the past few weeks and the past 1 month, all that water went to waste. I mean, what then can we do about that in terms of arresting this water, harvesting, and doing more with regards to then, ending dependency on rain-fed agriculture, because that seems to be diminishing in the context of the climate change that we are talking about, and make use of harvested water. How then can the government agencies and the CSOs and the other stakeholders cooperate on that front and ensure that we make use of this water?
Absolutely. Really, really important take on that. We really need to promote water adaptation. And that means promoting water storage. And water storage begins with individuals. When it's raining, for sure, we need to take advantage of that. Store water so that you don't just depend on what is being supplied. Because for one, Kenyans need to know that water doesn't come from the tap. Water comes from the catchments. When it rains, if we had enhanced the sponginess of our catchments, then some of that water would be stored upstream, and therefore reducing the amount of water, the floods that impact on people and nature. So that would have been ideal situation, enhancing, the ability of the catchment to store that water. But then the situation that we had calls for planning. How do we ensure that we have enough storage for that water? Not just preparing for disaster, but having some of that resources, knowing that, yes, it rains. And this is a phenomenon that we are going to experience from time to time due to climate change. So storage, investing in storage then becomes very, very important. And not waiting until the water is gone and then we're wondering, so where are we going to get water from? So storage becomes very, very important. And next to that would be enhancing restoration of our catchments so that most of that water can be held up in the catchments. And then during drought, that is the same water that is going to maintain base flows in our streams. You remember, during drought, you still have some eye of the springs, which is providing water. And this is the water that will maintain base flows in our rivers. So those are the things that we really need to think about. Prioritizing storage, adaptation at individual level, at the group level, and at the national level. Those who are supplying water, for instance, water supply companies, have they invested in storage, for instance? Big flower farms, big farms, have they invested in storage so that they can use that water during drought? And
the key word is planning, because the Met Department always gives the prediction that it's going to rain, and it takes proper planning to ensure that we harvest the water, so that the extension that we'll have is it informs our food security status, and we'll talk more about that. Coming to James Odongo, the Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization is a key player in the context of the day that is marked marked across the world today. What are your efforts in terms of contribution to the aspect of restoration?
Okay. So thank you very much, Ayub. I think just to sort of piggyback on what Dr. Ojwang has mentioned, is that back in 1973, we had the celebration of the first World Environment Day. And the theme of the celebration was Only One Earth. 51 years later, we are still having the same conversation on the need to actually take proactive actions, and of course now being more appreciative of our role within the ecosystem. So at KEPRO, I think our conversation is, or rather our intention, is towards dealing with the issue of waste. More specifically, appreciating packaging as a menace, if properly, or rather if improperly disposed. And so our intention is first to not only encourage and create awareness on the role of the consumer in terms of the environmental impact of improper disposal of waste. And of course now leading up to the issue of creation of jobs, and seeing that our communities are now taking more proactive approach, appreciating their role within the ecosystem, and of course now feeding to the general conversation around land restoration. Yeah.
Okay. Ernest, the Kenya Climate Innovation Center is equally another critical player in this whole discussion on environment, on climate change. And one of the key sub-thematic areas that the day which is marked across the world but hosted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is a desert country in the Middle East, will be revolving around is the aspect of stopping desertification. Is there enough awareness around that aspect when it comes to an understanding amongst the Kenyan public with regards to the cutting down of trees and which will have an adverse effect of lessening our forest cover?
Yeah, thank you. So I think maybe we just need to put it into context. For example, what really ails us, and I could look at it maybe from just 4 key points, because mainly is around how do we use our land that we have. So either we use it productively, sustainably, or we cause deforestation, as you've said, and that leads to desertification. Then we also look at it from the point of our cities. And infrastructure. How do we plan for our cities? How do we build our infrastructure? How do we develop them? Then in terms of governance, because all these things then affect our environment. Then I'll also look at it from the economic perspective and industry, because they're the same ones which abstract a lot of raw materials from the environment, use it, and actually end up in the environment again, that my brother over there has a problem to take care of. They're now looking at it from the social perspective. How are our behaviors as the people who live within that particular environment? How are our consumption patterns and our production patterns as the people who stay within that particular environment? Yeah. Having said that, yes, currently if I talk about climate change, people relate it to there's no rain. Yeah. And if you ask what do you need to do, people only tell you plant trees. But planting trees is just one aspect of combating climate change. It may be a good one, but it calls for a number of combinations. So the organization like Kenya Climate Innovation Center, we look at it from an entrepreneurial and innovative perspective. Because if you're telling me plant a tree, and then you're not providing me with alternative livelihood, then I look at that tree as my only source of income. So I'll end up cutting that particular tree either to sell it as timber or to burn it as charcoal so that I can get my livelihood. But if I'm able to provide you with an alternative, for example, I'll tell you, yes, maybe you are staying near a forest, but instead of you going to the forest to cut trees, maybe can you plant some fruit trees around your area, and then you're able to harvest those particular fruits and sell. So that way, the person who is staying next to a forest will not see the forest as his only source of income, but you're providing him with an alternative. So that's why we are, as Kenya Climate Innovation Center, we are promoting entrepreneurship within the climate ecosystem, so that people just doesn't look at the resources that we have, but they ask themselves, what is the alternative that I can have so that I keep my environment safe, but at the same time, I continue with my livelihood so that you build resilience within those particular communities. So, and if you look at it, even the current plan that the government has of planting about 15 billion trees. This can be achieved, yes, but you see the land mass is also the same. The population has grown, so there's a lot of human settlement. And also we've subdivided a lot of our land, so you'll not get big tracts of land. So we need to have an innovative way of how we'll achieve the 15 billion trees. Yeah. So people need to be sensitized more in terms of either using your hedges to plant some trees, maybe intercropping, where you can do agroforestry and still plant some trees and still continue producing your food. So that way then it will call for a lot of innovativeness, so that then we are able to combat issues around climate change and desertification. So I think there's still a lot that we need to do as a country to achieve that. But I think there's also positive steps that we've taken, that we are seeing some fruits bearing. Because if you look at the current statistics, now we are at about 12.1% tree cover. And initially about 5 or 10 years ago, we were almost at 8. So I think we are in the right direction.
We are within the required threshold?
At least 10%.
Yeah, 10% forest cover,
exactly.
as per the UN recommendation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Evelyn, coming to you then, because this theme, ecosystem restoration, it speaks to growing world population and also shrinking land mass, because the net effect is that. How can then restoration efforts be made in that context, in that regard of having a population that is ballooning and land mass that is shrinking, and also human needs that continue to evolve, especially now when talking about the migration of people, and which is having a net effect of having an impact on agriculture as well. So how do we attain that with regards to all those factors that are within the arena that we are talking about and having this discussion?
So the intense climate change has really caused a great effect to especially farmers. This contributing to a negative effect to agriculture. So, for instance, on the matter that you've stated on the reduced land size, because now we are trying to plant more trees, but also the population is increasing, we must maximize the resources that we have. Now that farmers have harvested water, for instance, in their water pans, during the dry season, they should maximize that water by using agriculture systems or solutions, such as the drip irrigation systems. At Rehab, we provide drip irrigation systems which save water by around 50%. So you find the water that the farmer has harvested can be used double as compared to the traditional methods of irrigation they would have used in the past. You find something like a solar pump. During when there is extreme sun, when there is extreme drought, so the sun intensity is a bit high, they do not need to use things like petroleum or kerosene. They could use that sun and use solar pumps to pump the water and irrigate their farms. So we use the available resources that we have. We adapt to the climate change using the available solutions that we currently have. So our advice or our advocacy towards how we can be able to improve agriculture is to helping farmers adopt to climate-smart irrigation solutions. Yes.
And how can that then be devolved down to the farmer? Because talking about agriculture, which is your area of expertise and your scope of operation, smallholder farmers are very key in our agriculture setup. How then do you devolve that, for example, messaging in terms of proper water usage to prevent loss of water or overusage of water, and ensure that they remain within the recommended standards of ensuring that what they use is not or does not border on waste, and ensure that they produce food also in that line? I mean, is your communication one that is devolved up to the point of reaching the smallholder farmer at the tail end of the conversation in the context of the agriculture sector?
Yes, actually we are working towards reaching the smallholder farmers, because you understand the smallholder farmers are the ones who are really affected by climate change. So we work closely with organizations. Actually, yesterday we were having a discussion with the National Irrigation Authority in how we are going to be able to reach the smallholder farmers, to be able to do a lot of capacity building, to enlighten them on the same, because once the farmers understand on how they're supposed to use the water, for instance, adopting the solutions, they can now be able to improvise this in their farms. I think it's a matter of just creating the knowledge, just bridging that knowledge gap. Once you're able to get to the ground, advise these farmers, do a lot of capacity building, educate them also on why they are supposed to adopt these solutions rather than using the traditional methods, now we can be able to curb this problem.
Okay, thank you. When we get back from the break, Dr. William and the esteemed members of my panel will extend this conversation, Dr. William, because talking about human-wildlife conflict, diminishing natural resources, climate change, and also a growth in our population, and how that is having an effect on the natural ecosystem of displacing the natural wildlife, and how that is affecting the ecosystem at large, around which the 2024 World Environment Day is themed, that will be hosted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We welcome your contributions as well, and we sample them in the course of this broadcast here on Daybreak. More after the break. Stay tuned.